The way we make different styles of beer, from a pale malt all the way down to a porter, is by blending these grains, okay? So right here I have 4 samples of grains for you. This is our standard pale malt. This is the foundation of all your beers, okay? Now we're not talking about Coors and Budweiser because they use other products called adjuncts, which are either corn or rice, but these are sources of fermentable sugars. And they're actually cheaper than 2-row barley. Once we get into these higher roast malts, the complexity gets greater, but they're also more expensive to produce. And so, of course, they're more expensive. Some of these come from England, some come from Germany, and there are a few malt facilities now in the United States. There's actually a very large one in Vancouver, Vancouver, Washington, that has been going for quite a while, called Great Western Malting, and we buy a lot of our malt from them. They do a great job. When you look at these, it's interesting because when you taste the pale malt, there's a very rare hint of sweetness to it. It tastes more bready than sweet. As the roast continues, you get more of caramel tones, and you get into the third level here. This is called a Karastan. This is called chocolate. It looks like chocolate, and it does actually have tastes of cocoa and smoky, warm flavors that you get out of there. Now this, at the bottom, is called roast material. This stuff is the backbone of Guinness, the brewery in Ireland. Guinness has malt facilities all over the world, as well as breweries brewing for them. But I was on the Siebel course, and we had guys from Guinness with us on the course, and they would tell about how many of these malt facilities would burn down almost every year. Because to get this roast material this dark, they have to roast it to a level where it's almost at a flash point. And the malt facilities literally just go up in flames in seconds because of the heat involved in getting it to that level. Now, when you get down to that level, this has a very deep, dark, sort of espresso chocolate component to it. So basically, there are more malts than this, but these are your basic painting palettes. Now, almost every beer that we make runs about 80% to 95% of the pale malt, okay? So that's your foundation. Then when you go on to that, you start blending your malts in at different ratios to create different beers. One of our stock beers that we're going to start with, I'm going to pour a Third Street wheat for you. Okay, so this is our wheat beer. It's pouring really nice today. Now this is wheat beers are very user-friendly. They're not that terribly complex, but they have a nice bready component to them. They're soft, they're easy to drink. It's a great summer beer. Now, one thing about our wheat beer, the Golden Valley wheat beer, is it is not a Hefeweizen, okay? So if someone asks for a Hefeweizen, they have to understand that this is not made with the yeast that throws the lactic component and the yeast at the bottom of the glass as a classic Hefeweizen will do. This is a classic Weiss beer, okay? It's German style, made with an ale yeast, okay? Now, that beer is about 65% pale malt and 46% wheat, which has also gone through the same process as the barley has gone through. This is our most user-friendly session beer. This is our closest in-house beer to an American style or a Heineken. And we're going to call this Beaverton Blonde, okay? With a bow to our home city there in Beaverton, okay? So the Beaverton Blonde is made with 96% pale malt, right? And then I don't know if you can see, but there is just a sense, little hint of caramel or a little darker blonde color here than the wheat, right? And that's from 4% of the Karastan. Now these, it doesn't take a lot of these. They're very potent when you mix them, and they have they throw a lot of flavor, but they also give a lot of color and character to the beer. Now both of these beers are great starter beers for someone who's not used to having microbrews. If they say they want a Budweiser or something, this is what you would give them or offer them and give them a taste. You're always welcome to sample any of the customers on taste. If they want to try something, that's great. And maybe they'll go to something a little darker. It's amazing how many people will start out with a wheat or a Beaverton Blonde and move on within a couple of years. They'll be drinking Red Thistle and then Tannenbaum, Oktoberfest, and away you go. You have a hooked customer. So this is just, with the addition of 4%, you're gaining that much color to the beer. It also gives you a little more depth in the malt complexity. Both of these are using Willamette hops, which are local hops. They're grown just across the river here in St. Paul, Oregon. And we actually source them from the Coleman Farm, which does an awesome job, and we've been working with them for years now. IPA stands for India Pale Ale. This beer has Carapils, pale malt, Karastan. The malt complexity in an IPA is again stronger, deeper, richer than both your Beaverton Blonde and your 3rd Street Wheat because of the amount of specialty malts that we've put in. Gives it more color, but it also increases the depth and richness of the beer.